Welcome to Part 2 of the Copyright Office's 6-part series, Breaking Down the Music Modernization Act. In this section, we will go over the history and operation of the statutory license for musical works, which was changed with the passage of the MMA. All owners of a musical work have a collection of rights, including the right to copy, adapt, distribute, publicly perform, and publicly display the work. However, some of these rights are subject to statutory limitations, including a limitation in Section 115 of the Copyright Act, which is also known as the mechanical license. The mechanical license allows someone who is not the copyright owner to make and distribute recordings of published musical works without the copyright owner's permission. But there are strict requirements that must be followed, including paying royalties and providing accounting statements. The mechanical license relates only to the rights of reproduction and distribution of musical works under the Copyright Act. It does not convey permission to publicly perform, display, or sync uses of a song in time with audiovisual material, like when a song plays during a movie scene. To understand the mechanical license, let's talk about where it came from. In the 19th century, songwriters earned royalties by selling copies of sheet music. But in the early 1900s, a new technology was becoming popular: the player piano. A player piano didn't need sheet music. Instead, its keys were triggered to play notes automatically or mechanically by holes in a roll of paper, called a piano roll. In 1908, the Supreme Court ruled that a piano roll, unlike a piece of sheet music, wasn't a copy that copyright owners could control. But the question of piano rolls and other mechanical reproductions, which by that point had grown into a multi-million-dollar industry, continued to draw much attention in Congress, which addressed it in the Copyright Act of 1909. Recognizing that composers should have the right to compensation from mechanical reproductions while seeking to curb an emerging monopoly in the piano roll market. Congress provided control to copyright owners over these mechanical copies of musical works, subject to an important limitation. Once a copyright owner first permitted the mechanical use of a song, any other person could make similar use by sending a notice and paying the copyright owner 2 cents per use under a license, and providing regular reports on the number of phonorecords made and distributed. Because the copyright law itself allows the user to obtain this license, rather than letting the copyright owner grant permission for this license, it is a type of compulsory or statutory licensing. This statutory license is now codified in Section 115 of the Copyright Act. Prior to the Music Modernization Act, a licensee could use this license to distribute phonorecords in a variety of products, including CDs, vinyl records, and MP3s, as long as the licensee typically served a notice on the copyright owner, paid royalties, and kept accounts. But with the rise of digital streaming and music downloading services, the system needed an update because the law no longer worked well with how music was used by digital music services. Under the old system, there was one big exception to the way the statutory license worked. The law generally required the user of the musical work, also called a licensee, to send a notice of intention to the copyright owner based on information in the Copyright Office's public records. But if the identity of the copyright owner was not available in the registration or other public records of the Copyright Office, a licensee could still take advantage of the license by serving the notice on the Copyright Office instead of on the copyright owner. If a licensee served notice on the Copyright Office, the licensee did not have to pay royalties until a copyright owner provided identifying information in the Copyright Office records, and even then, the copyright owner was only entitled to royalties going forward. This little-used exception became magnified with the rise of digital music streaming platforms. Online music services add millions of songs to their catalogs every year, meaning that they had to obtain millions of licenses, either through direct negotiations or by sending millions of notices, including thousands or even millions of notices to the Copyright Office when licensees couldn't locate copyright owners or were not sure if the ownership information was accurate because it was different than the information in the office's public records. The licensee's burden was compounded by the lack of an authoritative, comprehensive, public database linking sound recordings with the underlying musical works, which resulted in many unmatched works. And a missing or inaccurate license could have severe repercussions because it exposed an online music service to potential liability for copyright infringement. At the same time, songwriters were also at risk of missing out on their royalties if their musical works were not in the registration or other public records of the Copyright Office. Or they could face delays or underpayment of royalties because of the data challenges. It was clear change was needed and that the current system needed to be updated. Thus, the Music Modernization Act was passed. In the next video of this series, we will cover exactly how the MMA changes mechanical licensing. Be sure to stay up to date on the MMA at copyright.gov/music-modernization, where you can sign up for regular email updates about the MMA.